Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 2 of season 2, namely the series we are starting this new season off with, Zodiac Hierarchy. I am your host, the Peace Dealer, and I thought I'd bring it back to the traditional way we used to do these, but I will experiment with both styles. That being said, as we, of course, illuminated in the first episode, we have introduced the concept of Zodiac hierarchy. There are levels to these principles, okay? And we broke down the 3 different levels we will be exploring. The individuals, the supers, aka the socials, and the gods, aka the universals. So we will begin with, of course, the individuals. And of course, relative to the first 4 signs, we have the individual perspective, represented by Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer here. Before we present and perform our individuality socially, where it is integrated, we have the building blocks that actually make up what it is we are performing and who it is we are. So as you can see on this grid, we're going to be looking at the sun, moon, and rising, AC. However, you are also welcome to apply every other planet and point that you will or may have in these signs, okay? For Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer, primarily the sun, moon, or rising, should you have been born with any of these points in these 4 signs, you represent individuality. This is the first tier of the hierarchy. And what makes this once again very significant is, unlike the socials who integrate their personality based on who they are around and pretty much define themselves based on social activity and being outside, even the ones of them that are antisocial and not extroverted, and the universals who more identify and represent everything as a whole, individuals represent very effectively the uniqueness of an individual. It's increasingly difficult for individuals to be influenced by the society and world around them, which opens up its own pros and cons. 2 of the signs on this graph are antisocial, meaning they're opposite social signs, representing this for this reason. Aries is going to be seen as selfish versus Libra, who is more altruistic and cooperative. Taurus is going to be seen as more preserving their self-interests versus Scorpio, who may deal with other people's money, opening up trust. Okay. But regardless, these are going to represent the 4 elemental qualities of our individuality. Our expression of who we are, Aries, what we have, Taurus, I have, what I think, Gemini, and what I feel. We all have individual thoughts and individual feelings. Scorpio and Libra are where we bridge our thoughts through interpersonal relationships and actions. And Cancer through Scorpio are shared emotions in Scorpio from our individual feelings. So having a point or placement or planet here represents this fundamental building block of a tier that enables you to retain your own uniqueness. That is one of the major pros to this. And I wanted to introduce it this way because even though this is hierarchical, and even though, of course, having placements at the last 4 signs puts you at the top of this hierarchy, what makes this bottom tier of the hierarchy essential is that you actually have an individuality. Okay. Beings who have more energy in the other two tiers sacrifice or trade their individuality to connect bigger than themselves. So it's not uncommon to see someone who might only have universal placements really focus on things as it pertains collectively. They don't necessarily step into their ego or have their own opinions about something. A good example of this is someone who represents a World Economic Forum, right? Or a collective outlet where they're not on this national or international platform going to share their own personal opinions because they are afraid of who they may offend, right? They're not just representing themselves. They are representing the collective organization they are a part of. And a lot of what they say has to align with more people's or beings' views or rules or principles, whether in the animal kingdom, the human kingdom, versus if you have your own independent platform, your own individuality shines through, where you are more inclined to say what you feel and think about things at the risk of other relationships, certain people who may back you or not. It's a very important distinction. And as I will show in later parts, it's good to have a natural balance of at least one or two of the other types of the tier, as we will discuss more in part 5. That being said, you will also have archetypes of people who are solely individual. All your big three is in these first 4 signs. And that really hones in on how unique of an individual you are. This is the youthful tier. Aries is about 0 to 2, and by Cancer we round out at 12. So this is 0 to 12. And the youth brings freshness. Aries is always going to put me on to the new music, the new show, and this is going to activate before we begin to integrate in Cancer. So placements here are going to represent great activators, people who initiate and begin things. Before something goes mainstream through Libra and it's collectively ingested around the world through Sagittarius that brought it that light, it was the Gemini, the Taurus, and Aries that started the idea before it got big. You're really good at starting movements, at being at the forefront of things that are about to break out. All right. This is a really good perk of having these placements. Now, if you have your sun here, right, for Aries, as you can see, this is for the warrior spirit. The Aries moon has the warrior soul, and the Aries rising is the embodiment of this fire, the warrior. The archetype we'll use for Aries is the warrior, the original, the prototype. But given that their OG is the god of war, y'all are warriors. And every Aries I've ever seen definitely has this. The spirit of it, we'll go more deeper into that. Now, Taurus is the connoisseur, the producer. They take the grapes in Aries and they make it fine wine. Okay? And everything comes natural to Taurus. So the Taurus sun is the producer spirit, the natural spirit. The Taurus moon is the exalted natural soul, as it's exalted in Taurus. And then the natural embodiment, natural royalty, okay, for the Taurus rising. Now, Gemini is going to represent individual thought process, your ideas. Before we now analyze and, criticize how real or basis in real these ideas are, the actual ideas, the hypothesis, Gemini. All right. This is the enlightened individual who, with their own thinking and logic, breaks free out of Plato's cave. Okay. The angel is the messenger of God. And since Gemini is the messenger of the Zodiac, the Gemini sun is the messenger spirit, the angel spirit. The Gemini moon is the angel soul. And the Gemini rising is the embodiment of the word or the truth, the embodiment of the messenger, the actual angel. Cancer, we now represent as sincerity, whereas the power of Cancer becomes pure. The quality of that is purity in Scorpio, and the experience of that in Pisces is divinity. That all stems from holy power, holy water. Cancer, representing the sanctity of our inner selves and our emotions. When we do not poison the well of our feelings and we're coming from a sincere, holy space, that enables this activation of individuality to now be complete and begin to integrate socially, so that we can pull all this together and perform it on stage with Leo, bringing in the super strength. Okay, so the Cancer sun is the Holy Spirit, the Cancer moon is the Holy Soul, and the Cancer rising is the embodiment of holiness and sincerity in its integrity, of course. All right, so that brings us into Aries, cardinal fire. For those of you who have placements in Aries, you have the original power. And this is where, despite the connotations of hierarchy, every tier on this hierarchy has significance. Obviously, Pisces is going to be the top floor of a penthouse suite, but without the first floor, it would have no foundation. Okay, so the first floor is the beginning of this suite, where you have to check in with the clerk and give your ID, right? Who are you? Or regardless, we call this the ground floor, the first priority. This is raw power. And you guys represent the first level of fire release. Now, to add more fun to this hierarchical discussion, we are going to really also illuminate supernatural potency and capability. You guys have firepower. You have the ability to spark fire, literally and metaphorically. You bring and spark excitement into things. The beautiful thing about this power of Aries is you are the power of individuality through authenticity. Okay, so you're able to, in reflecting your authenticity, really see real time how inauthentic other people are. And it's very common for Aries to really bring that unfiltered rawness, and other people have to adjust to literal fire sparking, rawness, vulgarity. That is your power. It is the initiatory cardinal potency that pushes forward. I am sexy. Okay, I'm moving forward as what I am. And the fire is the spark, like when you flick a lighter. Okay? And this is going to be represented in that initial burst, whether through anger, primarily through instinct, that pushes you forward. And your power is to start anything. Cut lines. The ability to sustain this power over time comes through the other signs. And so maybe you may not always finish what you start if you do not, of course, integrate with other perspectives, but this is your power. The ability to also identify who you are and who others are through who you are. Okay. Very beautiful relative to fire release. It is the first power. It is the start to every cycle. So your power lies in sparking things up, really being at the forefront of what is about to activate, what's about to be hot. You make it hot. Okay. And this is where, of course, as we go deeper for the Aries suns, you are the warrior spirit. You emit this consciousness in the way you express who you are. And with the light of your spirit, reflect who you are. And through this Aries sun, it's able for you to see who is fugazi and who is really themselves, as that level of authenticity and unfiltered spirit filters through. And this is what actually contributes towards you having the ability to spark fire through the life force that is of the fire element, representing itself in increased vitality, raw power, having a higher temperature rather than others, and being able to conjure this. All right. The Aries moon is going to be the soul of the warrior. Think Cardi B throwing her chancla at whoever thinks they can play her. People might have criticized her for that, but that's because they don't understand that at the core of her being is a warrior. Aries is the instinctual. So before you can think about what you're doing, you've already taken action. A quality like this was necessary for survival. And that's where, by the time we get to the more refined quality of Libra, which is a yin concept, which is really more a social dynamic, right? That now perfects and polishes this. It is unpolished and unfiltered as it is supposed to be in Aries. As such, you carry the receptivity of who you are. and can feel who others are, can feel when they're being inauthentic. This, of course, is the original soul power. And then we have the Aries rising, which embodies authenticity, the cardinal archetype of authenticity, and the warrior, okay, the original, the prototype, who carries the torch, and it embodies this forward motion. Next, of course, we have Taurus. And as Taurus represents fixed earth, okay, this is the earth release of the first tier. Individuality fixed in values and worth. Because you affix a value to any service or product you put out there. This gets taken out to Virgo, the market, to be traded. And the higher self-esteem and values grounded in reality you can stand on, the more that this strengthens the identity of your character, as well as what you feel you're worth, hence it being tied to your self-esteem. This, of course, is expressed through physical strength that draws from the raw potency of Aries. This is the distinction I want to make now. Before we get into the super strength of a Leo, it starts from the raw power of Aries. Natural through Taurus, all natty, without any substances, without anything added. And so for those of you who have Taurus placements, you carve through the individuality of your worth through your values, and this makes you an earth release manifester. You're able to now carry forth this fundamental building block as far as being able to add groundedness to things. Whereas Aries will spark it, you move the slowest. You do not move nearly as quickly as Aries, but when we check through Aries' work, Aries may have to go back and tweak some things. You took your time to make sure each step was strengthened so that when it's done, it's done. And what Taurus represents is quality, physical quality. This is buying a Gucci bag or a BMW that is still as fresh as when you bought it 10 years ago. Quality that takes time. So while you are easily the slowest, you are one of the strongest because of the time and quality you put in to shaping this grounded value. And I can't emphasize alone what individual value you gain. Your power here at this tier is to make anything and build it from the mud. You are the self-made royal, okay? And this and establishes your ability to manifest and ground what it is you create the fertile soil to build through, all right? So, of course, the Taurus sun is the natural spirit. Their conscious awareness enables them to express value and produce value, which now slows down their conscious expression in order to align and tap in more physiologically to nature. This is going to ground the nature of their awareness, allowing them a much smoother nature of what they are aware of through their 5 physical senses. The distinction of this with the Taurus moon is a more natural, receptive soul space and subconscious space that is very stubborn emotionally, but can now feel through their natural 5 senses with an exalted, refined quality. Hearing sharper, smelling smoother, tasting much richer. It is bar none one of the best moon signs one can have, albeit I don't necessarily want to compare. I'm not in the belief that there's a better sun or moon sign than any other. But of course, given that we're in an earth dimension, it is not a bad one to have. You are receptive to value, whereas the Taurus sun will see the Gucci bag and they're just going to see that it's a knockoff. The Taurus moon is going to feel it. They're going to touch the bag. right? Even though Taurus, regardless of sun, moon, or rising, is tactile based with the sun and moon, the moon is going to just be able to be receptive to value. Being aware of value and being receptive to value is subtly different. There's a distinction. But now by the time you embody this and embodying that tree and embodying the rock in with the AC, you are now, of course, represent this natural value, of course, through your personality. And as such, these are the distinctions that we will see with this fixed earth where the value is grounded. Then, of course, we begin to activate the idea and the thought process around who we are in Aries and what we're worth in Taurus through magic. Okay, Aries is the first power, Taurus is the first energy and strength, and Gemini is the first magic, word magic. Everything, of course, with which begins with an idea. I think I'm sexy, AF. And why that's very significant is because now we are putting words to who we are and what we're worth, shaping them through our attitude. All right. The air release. Gemini releases this element through thought and through word, opening up the initial experience of communication intrapersonally and then interpersonally through Libra. Why this is very significant, of course, as a mutable sign, is that this offers perspective. Before we criticize them in Virgo, we, of course, have an initial hypothesis. I think gravity falls or accelerates at a certain speed, right? Before we test that out through Virgo, we have to have that initial hypothesis to open up the world of possibility. But as a magic, it forms our reality through our mindset and attitude. And as such, for those of you with Gemini placements, this is your power at this first tier, the initiatory thought. From a very quantum level of telepathy, as simple as being able to finish people's sentences when they get stuck at a word and you know exactly the word for them to say, to actually being able to say what people are thinking. You have the power to stimulate people's minds with your ideas and to communicate your thoughts in a way that open up this vehicle of communication in the first place. Before we present these ideas polished through Libra, this enables you to activate what it is you are getting ready to think and present. Okay. And as such, the Gemini sun is going to be the angel spirit, the spirit of the angel. Of course, the first archangel star, Aldebaran, Watcher of the East, is represented at 9 degrees through Archangel Michael. So being within an orb, having your rising sun or moon through this directly connects you with Michael, for those of you who are closer to 9 degrees or at least within that range. And as such, the Gemini sun is the spirit of enlightenment, bringing to others' consciousness the enlightening nature of ideas which are brilliant, like a light bulb moment. Okay? With the Gemini spirit, you are able to bring light through your words that bring clarity to others, aligned with who and what you are. Now that Gemini moon carries an important distinction. This is the angel soul. So that means at your core, you are an angel. And similar to the Gemini sun that could be aware of what's not true, you are like a living lie detector who is receptive to ideas. You listen to what people say, as the moon is receptive and receiving, whereas the sun is expressive. And you can hear how someone has the audacity to try to lie to your face. Like they don't even know you know they lie. Okay. This is magic. This is what may not be fully accepted in certain logic circles, but I do have the belief that there is a frequency base to this. You do not have to have the details of how it's not true. You can feel the frequency of its untruthfulness or of there being dishonesty without even having to know why. You're just going to feel if it's true or not. Okay. At a subjective level based on what you feel is true, and at an objective level based off of what just doesn't feel like the truth, or at least in alignment with what's being presented. And this receptivity to messages allows you to hold within your soul what an experience is before you express it through your sun sign. And of course, the Gemini rising embodies this principle of enlightenment. Being an actual angel, embodying the messenger, enabling one to actually be what they say. Last but not least, we have Cancer, cardinal water. And I learned that Cancer was influenced by the crab leg-like look that Cancer cells have in the body. I had no idea that's why. I didn't even know that there was a correlation at first. But yeah, that being said, of course, unlike the first power and cardinal sign Aries, we now step deeper into the bottom of the ocean. You, of course, being primarily composed of water, tap into this through the function of feeling. So whereas Aries is going to be the cardinal raw function of instinct and raw instinctual action, Cancer is now psychic power. Raw power with Aries, psychic power. Now, this is already controversial because, postmodern materialist reductionist science doesn't even acknowledge psychic power outside of pseudoscientific fraud. All right, especially in the ways it's expressed. But for the purpose of this, we're going to attribute psychic power to the power of your mind. Everyone in the world has psychic power, even animals. I want you to borrow this away from maybe the way we see this contemporarily expressed in pop culture and simply just see it as the intuitive power of the psyche. The power of your mind generates feelings as a product of your attitude to direct what you feel and how. And this can express itself in supernatural ways, through clairsentience, through intuitive feelings, through empathy. However, this primarily represents an understanding of yourself that you navigate through what you feel directly connected to your subconscious mind. And it is through this psychic power, Cancer, that we impress our subconscious mind, which is why feeling is the secret. And this is how you know Cancer is the secret, because the cardinal function of Cancer is feeling. Hence, not only representing water release, but being the water release feelers. All right. As such, this enables you to tap into the sincerity of what others feel. Whereas Aries is going to really tap into one's character through their identity and how authentic they are. You are going to feel how insincere or how sincere someone is, which is a psychic power. The ability to tap into one's energy signature and to hear someone say something, whereas 10 other people heard them say it, but you felt they were disingenuous. You felt it was something about what they expressed that wasn't real. That's a psychic power. It's something, it's a psychic power brought about from basic deduction, whether inductively, deductively, or foregoing it. But because we attribute psychic ability to phenomena that is unexplainable by science, some of the most mundane things are brought about by psychic power. And it's a more realistic way I want to bring this forward. That can exist at the extremes of being able to just feel where someone's cat is, but also in a very simplistic way in being able to feel emotional patterns that block you from truly expressing yourself. This, of course, translates into the ability to feel who others are and to really empathically guide them through their own feelings. Now, if you have the sun here, you express this psychic awareness through your consciousness. And you can and are consciously aware of how others express and bridge their individual feelings with yours. And it's through your spirit expression that you can integrate this holy power. As you will see with all expressions in Cancer, you generate a field that those who are insincere or evil cannot tolerate your presence. It's like putting holy water on a demon. And you play with that. You're able to make people uncomfortable who are not as sincere with you relative to how you really go beneath the surface, which Cancer represents the privacy of the fourth house, and start to draw this out. Now, the Cancer moon is going to be deeply receptive to emotions, feelings, and psychic phenomena, minute and huge. Given the nature of this element, which is water, which is yin, which is not rational, which is not grounded, it can be irrational. Hence why it needs to be balanced with other elements. In fact, fully just depending on this element can trap you into a subjective world of emotions that are not really grounded in logic. However, it does not change the fact that it does tap you into a more pure understanding of what you are being told by these emotions and feelings, especially once again, when grounded with proper analysis and logic, to now make sense of certain irrational feelings that may have been more intuitive than seemingly irrational. So the Cancer moon is the holy soul that holds within their space the purified emotion, and the Cancer rising embodies that priestess, that priest that now stands in the integrity of sincerity, the sincerity of emotion in which they embody. And that's where we're going to conclude for episode 1. As we can see, these are the original elementals that activate uniqueness, with an exception of Cancer that steps into integration. If we go seasonally, Aries, of course, is going to be the fire release, representing identity. Taurus is going to be the earth release, representing value and possession. Gemini is going to be the air release, representing thought process and enlightenment. And Cancer is going to be the meta-human superpower, representing feeling and psychic understanding as well as awareness. Something that, as we kind of innovate our understanding of, will relegate itself beyond the realm of fantasy and science fiction and find its way into science, as it is supposed to be. That being said, if you have any of these planets, especially if you have the sun or moon, these two luminaries, or the rising in these signs, you're an individual. All right. If you have the sun, you're an individual spirit. If you have the moon, you're an individual soul. And if you have the rising, you embody individuality. If you have all of them here, you are fully and totally individual, which means you are youthful. You are going to start major things. You might want to find a social or collective to help extend it for you, to complete it and bring it to the world. But you are definitely someone who understands and is aware of who and what you are and what you're here to contribute to the rest of the collective. Okay. That being said, we have finished the August contribution. We've introduced this concept. We finished the individuals. In about 2 weeks, we're going to step into the socials, and 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks from then, we're going to look into the collectives before we conclude in October. You guys stay blessed as always. I would love for you to comment down below. Who are my indies? Let my individuals represent. If you have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, comment down the planets, comment down the sun or moon or the rising, and you know, represent yourself. Let us know that you're here. Comment down your experience. Let us know if this interpretation of this tier expresses itself towards you, through you, from you, what it's like meeting other individuals such as yourself, what it's like dealing with others like the socials or the collectives. As you know, when we do the conclusion, we'll get into the differences, why it's difficult for socials to accept individuals who might be more focused on themselves, how universals love individuals who are able to, you know, embody universal concepts that they have, and vice versa. You guys stay blessed as always, and until next time, peace.